Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It, and I just finished watching the new Netflix Christmas movie, Jingle Jangle, directed by David E. Talbert, and I'll give you my thoughts and review right after the jump. Real quick, if you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. So, full disclosure, I am not a Christmas person. um, I don't I don't like Christmas music. I hate that we start the Christmas season earlier. I would be the quintessential Grinch. Scrooged is one of my favorite Christmas movies, so the holiday season never really hits me. So when everyone was talking about this new Black Christmas film, I was like, I don't care. I don't want to see this. And from the moment that I hit play on this, I was smiling from ear to ear all the way to the finish. And if anyone has ever seen the How the Grinch Stole Christmas, that scene where his heart starts melting away, like the evil gunk around his heart starts melting away, and he starts getting bigger and bigger in Christmas season. This movie did that as it went along, and I was in hog heaven. This movie is directed by David E. Talbert, who has done Almost Christmas and Baggage Claims, renowned playwright. Stars Phylicia Rashad, Forest Whitaker, and Anika Noni Rose, as well as some other young talent. But if you to put this film into some type of a category, I would say the gumbo would be A Christmas Carol, The Greatest Showman, The Wiz, and like Polar Express. You mix them all into a pot, and then you sprinkle a lot of black girl magic on it, and that's what this movie is. And it is a delight. As a black male, as a black person, holiday movies don't typically feature us, especially stuff on the spectacle and design of this. And for as big as this is, as grand as this is, the costume setting, as the performances, as the dancing sequences, the music is, this is something that we don't normally get to play in this box, and it's so good. It helps that it's good too, but it's so good and refreshing to see something new for us that it is, and that is actually very good. Um, that in this shit show of a year that 2020 has been, it is exciting and refreshing to have something that's just genuinely heartfelt and warm and just gives you that feeling that Christmas is supposed to give. This does that for me tenfold. I think the performances are great. I think the music is fantastic. The little young girl, I just want to like put my arms around her and hold her and just like everything's going to be okay. My wife, now I can't get out of my head. My wife says she looks like a young Janelle Monáe. We'll rock with it. That I don't I don't disagree. She was phenomenal. So cute, adorable, um, and the way into what is just a magical world that I can't get enough of this. I downloaded the soundtrack. I just finished watching. I downloaded the soundtrack. I'm ready to kind of watch this again. I don't know how many times I'm going to pop this on before Christmas, but it's a delight. It's not all great. It does not bother me, but the film is long. It's about 2 hours and some change. 2 hours and a little bit longer. 2 hours 2 minutes. Musicals are typically that long. You usually have a first act, second act, so it doesn't bother me because if you're set in the theatrical world or the musical theater world, that's to be expected. But anyone watching the typical Christmas movies, like they're usually running an hour and a half. So sometimes your kids, if you're trying to pop this in for your kid, they may not have the temperament to stick with it all the way through. I did not notice the length of the time. I saw before going in that it was 2 hours, and then once it was over, I was like, oh wow, this seems like this is where they end, and it is. Um, but I don't have a problem with it. But I think a lot of that is because there are so many different elements that are being brought up in this film. You deal with loss, reconciliation of that loss, or dealing with the grief of that loss, believing in yourself, believing in your work, um, just believing in the imagination, and all of that stuff sort of comes together and ties up into a bow, and it all comes together well. But it takes a bit of a long walk to get there, and some people may have an issue with this being a kids film and it being 2 hours and 2 minutes long. But I plan to pop this on as many times as I possibly can, so the length doesn't bother me. If anybody's into theater, the second that you see Anika Noni Rose pop up on screen, she's got to give you a musical number, and they hold it. They do. You see her, she goes away for a while, and then she comes back at the end. You're like, at some point, you don't put Anika Noni Rose in this musical and not have her sing, and she sings. When she comes on, I the hair on my arm stood up. It's goosebump, very goosebump creating. It's hair raising. It's fantastic to the point where I need to probably. I'm glad there were no shoes around because I went to go find a shoe, take it, and then throw it at the screen. You better sing, heifer. But I'm glad I didn't have a shoe. My TV's still intact. But the next time I watch it again, hopefully that shoe is still gone because it was great. There are a lot of moments that give that warmth, that heartfelt, and to see people like who look like me on screen doing this is just it's what I needed. That refreshing soul food that you get. You need that every now and then, especially in the world that we live in. So, uh, yeah, on that scale of once is enough, play it again, Sam, or give me a time stone so I never have to see this again. You're gonna play this again, Sam. This is one of my favorite movies of the year, and as a person who is known as a Scrooge. I will self-declare myself as that. That is saying a lot about this film. But I do need to caveat that I am also a theater person, so this sort of backdoors its way in through that. But I think even if I wasn't, there's enough heart, magic, and just joy in this film that even the most hardened person who's like bah humbug to all Christmas, even Ebenezer, would be like, you know what, they jamming. Them background dancers even funny. They jamming over here. So that's what I think. Go ahead and leave your comments in the comments below. Let me know what you think about it. If you haven't, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI or you can email us at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt at gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. That's on a bit of a hiatus because there's really nothing releasing that fits the schemes of that podcast. But we do have a sister podcast called You Can't Do That Anymore that talks about all classic films like Tropic Thunder and American Beauty. And we discuss what they did when they were released versus whether they can do that now. Tropic Thunder is the last episode, and it's a fun one. But that's all. Like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.